So, My Hero Academia recently ended. And good heavens is the ending atrocious. Character assassinations, plot holes, absolutely nonsense plot twists. It's like the author was trying to write the worst ending imaginable. Now, I assume that you know what the series is about. Why else would you be looking up reviews of the ending? But just in case you're one of those people that hasn't seen the anime or read the manga, My Hero Academia is the story of a world of superheroes with powers called quirks. The series follows Izuku Midoriya, nicknamed Deku, a high school boy born with no quirk of his own. Midoriya practically worships these superheroes and spends all of his time studying them and following them around. In particular, Deku idolizes one supe above the rest, a Superman-esque hero named All Might. However, despite putting these heroes on a pedestal, when Deku sees a boy he grew up with being attacked by a powerful supervillain and realizes none of his beloved heroes will step up to help, he rushes in to save him despite having no powers of his own. Because of this event, Midoriya earns the respect of his favorite hero, All Might, and after an unlikely encounter with the hero, he discovers that his childhood idol is not quite what he appears to be. See, in a previous battle with a powerful and dangerous villain named All For One, All Might suffered a grave injury to his stomach, which severely affected his ability to use his quirk. As a result of this injury, he is slowly losing his ability to take on the form of the hero All Might. And after seeing Midoriya rise to the occasion of saving his childhood bully, he decides that it is time to pass on his quirk, one for all. So, All For one for all. Pretty cool names, if not a bit cliche. Deku obtaining his favorite hero's powers and slowly getting better at using them, to one day fully fill the shoes of All Might. Simple setup for the plot, right? That's what I thought too. But apparently, the author had a different vision in mind, at least by the end of the series. See, Deku says at the start of the show, and multiple times throughout it, that this is the story of how he became the world's greatest hero. So you go into this show fully believing that this young, quirkless boy will one day become something amazing. A superhero to be looked up to by people at his current age, the way he looks up to All Might. And that's the pretense of the show. One day, Midoriya will become the hero that he loves the most. And there are indeed multiple moments throughout the show where it seems like this will be the case. Many times, he fights villains that are far more powerful than him, and each time, he gains a little bit more control over One For All. One of my favorites of these moments comes in Season 6, as a powerful villain named Shigaraki organizes a league of supervillains with the goal of wiping out every hero in the world. Shigaraki is significant because he is the successor to All For One, just like how Deku is the successor to All Might. Having been gradually given All For One's various quirks, Shigaraki emerges as a serious threat to the world of heroes, even to the best of them. Well, naturally, the successor to One For All and the successor to All For One end up battling, despite the fact that at this point in the series, Shigaraki is undoubtedly far stronger than Deku, but that doesn't stop him. Having unlocked a few more powers of his own, which strangely never presented themselves in All Might, Deku takes on Shigaraki by himself. What gets me about this fight is that even despite the fact that Shigaraki is far more powerful than he is, Deku never wavers. This feels like a small glimpse of the #1 hero he seems destined to become. And fittingly, during this fight, Deku uses the named attacks All Might used to use. It seems like he's finally become strong enough to do these moves justice, but I don't think that's the reason why he uses them. See, similar to in One Piece, saying the name of an attack doesn't actually have any effect on its power. This isn't Jujutsu Kaisen. So why doesn't Deku just keep using the names he came up with on his own? Well, I think it's pretty clear that it's because he feels that by using the same named attacks as All Might used, he can somehow channel his hero's strength at a time when he needs it most. You gotta keep in mind, Midoriya is only 16 years old at this point, and he's fighting a life or death battle with a supervillain, something he never thought would be possible a year prior. He didn't grow up with powers, but here he finds himself against arguably the most powerful villain in the world's history up to this point. It makes sense then that he'd use All Might's technique names like Detroit Smash and Texas Smash, because he feels like only All Might could defeat this guy, and he has essentially become All Might. This fight is absolutely amazing, and goes a long way towards showing the audience that one day he won't need to use these named attacks out of fear, out of some hope to channel a strength he doesn't know he has. He will use them because he is finally powerful enough to actually recreate the attacks All Might used. After this battle, it's clear that if Midoriya can't beat Shigaraki, the entire world as he knows it will end. So, he has no choice but to train and try to master the full power of One For All before Shigaraki fully masters All For One's powers. Thus, we find ourselves in a race against time. Unfortunately, despite Deku eventually being able to fully utilize One For All, he is still not strong enough to beat Shigaraki in a one-on-one fight. And that's where the show starts to fall apart at its seams, where I started to lose hope. How is it that All Might was able to beat All For One all those times with only super strength, but Deku with super strength plus 8 other quirks can't beat Shigaraki? Sure, maybe All For One collected a few more quirks along the way, but in a way, so did All Might. As I mentioned earlier, Midoriya unlocks several additional One For All powers that not even All Might was ever able to use. So it should be the case that in this battle against a powered up All For One successor, Deku still has the edge. But the author seriously screwed up, and decided to make Shigaraki way too strong, and essentially invincible due to his ability to instantly regenerate. Basically, the Madara and Kaguya problem from Naruto. This intentional power imbalance culminates in one of the worst writing decisions I've ever seen an author make. Midoriya ends up giving his quirk away to Shigaraki. The reasoning behind this decision is supposed to be that Shigaraki, as a vessel for extreme power like Midoriya, can potentially be destroyed by his own body if he takes on too many powers at once. So instead of a flashy final fight where the hero ends up emerging victorious, like we got in a flashback with All Might vs All For One, we are given an anticlimactic inner battle, where Deku tries to strike at the heart of Shigaraki's pain. One of the lamest turns of events I've ever seen.
But wait! There's more!
By this point in the series, All For One has become a thing of the past, having been finally closed off from Shigaraki and unable to control him. Yet, when Midoriya succeeds in freeing Shigaraki from his pain and hatred, All For One somehow just comes back, more powerful than ever. After this, we see that Deku has somehow lost his arms, in addition to only possessing an ember of One For All after transferring it all to Shigaraki. This is as hopeless as the series has ever been. And it's at this moment that I think the author finally realized how bad he messed up, and Deus Ex Machina starts to kick in. In a fashion similar to Naruto, multiple characters appear from the woodworks, having apparently laid complicated plans off-screen to combat All For One. And despite being completely useless against a much weaker Shigaraki roughly 100 chapters prior, everyone is now somehow able to come together as a unit and withstand All For One's attacks. This absolutely out of the blue turn of events culminates in a girl named Eri, with the ability to rewind time on people and places, giving up her power to give Deku back his arms. At this point, thanks to additional Deus Ex Machinations from his teacher at UA, Erasure, and his childhood bully turned friend, Bakugo, our bloody and broken main character is finally able to deliver a final blow to All for One, and literally vaporize him somehow. He just pops like a balloon. Now, if this wasn't already awful enough, the author proceeds to make even more questionable writing decisions. But before we get to that, let's back up a bit. Throughout My Hero Academia, Deku and a girl named Ochako are very clearly shipped by the author. At many points in the series, it looks like the two will actually get together by the end. But that's not what happens. Instead, after the events of the war against All for One, Ochako and the rest of Deku's friends at UA seem to completely forget he exists for 8 years. Not weeks, not months, years. So not only does the main character become quirkless again, he literally goes back to the exact life he was living prior to the events of the series, friendless and literally powerless to do anything about it. It's like the entire show was some kind of fantasy he lived, some delusion of epic proportions that never actually took place. What kind of way to end the series is that? Why screw over your own main character like this? After everything he's done, Deku has nothing to show for it, and I just don't understand how the author found this satisfying. It almost feels spiteful in a way. Oh, but don't worry, Deku does actually get his powers back. After ghosting him for 8 years, his former classmates and so-called friends chip in a bunch of money to somehow have a super suit developed, which contains the powers of... well, we don't know. We're never told anything specific. It's to be assumed that researchers have somehow developed a suit that will give Deku all of his old quirks back. And while I'm on that note, if the government can just build super suits that contain these powerful abilities, haven't they just completely nullified natural superheroes? It's only at this point that Deku finally becomes a hero again. But something is clearly missing here. The manga is over now. There will be no more chapters or any new information about Deku's ultimate fate. But one burning question still remains. When does Deku become the world's greatest hero? For 8 years, Midoriya apparently takes a backseat to everyone else in his class, opting to become a teacher at UA instead. During this time, Bakugo and another of his classmates, Shoto, take over the new number 1 and number 2 slots in the superhero popularity contest. I should add that during this 8-year time skip, Bakugo seemingly reverts completely back to his old self, undoing nearly all of his character development for the sake of a joke. My Hero Academia was supposed to be about Deku. We're led to believe, for more than 400 chapters, that Deku one day fills the shoes of his childhood hero All Might, and becomes the world's number 1 hero. But this never comes to pass. After sacrificing his arms, his powers, and his dream of being a hero, Deku is left alone for 8 years, only to be given an Iron Man suit at the last second as some sort of consolation prize. Deku and Ochako never get together, and Deku never actually achieves what the series claimed he did at its onset. Instead, one of the final lines in the manga completely goes back on what Deku said at the start of the series. Rather than becoming the greatest himself, Deku now says that he has been telling the story of how they all became the world's greatest heroes. In saying this, Deku just sounds like he's trying to ride the other heroes' coattails, as he no longer has powers and is only allowed the ability to fight crime again because the actual superheroes felt bad. There's not a chance in hell that Deku ever becomes the world's greatest after this point in the story. Not without One for All. Not with some super suit in place of the quirk and a normal human body underneath it all. By the end of the series, Deku never did enough to fill the shoes of All Might. Hence why, when we see the statues of the heroes that defeated All for One, it's still All Might that we see front and center. Clearly, to the world at large, Deku never did become number 1. Thus, 430 chapters later, we finally find out that we've been told a story under false pretenses. And with the benefit of hindsight, this entire series becomes pointless. This finale just sucks. It's one of those endings that makes me not want to reread the story again. There are only a few series I can think of with worse endings than what we got from MHA, and not by a wide metric either. And that's just such a disappointment, because this series had so much potential to be amazing. All the author had to do was stick the landing. But I guess all the crazy fan shipping got to him. Anyway, I've probably ranted enough about this series to last a lifetime. What do you think? Do you hate My Hero Academia's ending as much as I do? Or are you one of those mythical fans that actually like it? In either case, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more like it. Thank you so much for watching, and take it easy.